Can a tiny seed of hope change a dark world? There was a town where people had stopped looking up at the sky. Life had become a loop of routines and responsibilities, a heavy coat they wore day in and day out. As they walked, their heads were always bowed, eyes fixed on the cracked pavement or the glowing screens in their hands. Their faces were tired, etched with the worries of yesterday and the anxieties of tomorrow. The entire town seemed to be painted in shades of gray, from the buildings to the very air they breathed. Streetlights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh, artificial glow that did little to warm the streets. Screens flickered in almost every window, their blue lights spilling out onto the sidewalks, promising connection but delivering only distraction. The town was full of light, but it was a cold, empty kind of light, and the stars, the brilliant ancient stars that had guided sailors and inspired poets for millennia. No one noticed them anymore. They had become just another part of the background, forgotten, like a song no one remembers the words to. Almost no one. There was one little girl. From her bedroom window, she saw things differently. Her name was Ilara, and she was a collector of small wonders. A strangely shaped pebble, a feather dropped by a passing bird, the way the rain sounded on the roof. And every single night, she kept a lonely vigil for the stars. She would sit with her chin resting on her hands, her breath fogging up the cool glass, and stare out into the endless, silent night. Every night, she pressed her face to the glass, so close she could feel the chill of the outside world, and she'd whisper to the darkness, "Why do you look so empty?" The sky above her town was a vast, inky blanket, but it was strangely blank. Here and there, a few weak stars managed to flicker like distant, lonely embers, but they seemed shy, as if they were afraid of being seen. It wasn't the majestic, glittering canopy she had read about in her books. It was a sky that looked tired, just like the people below. In her heart, a deep longing grew. She wished for more light, for a sprinkle of magic, for a sense of wonder to return to her town. She wished the adults would lift their heads just once and see the quiet beauty waiting for them. But her wishing felt so small, a tiny whisper against a storm of silence. How could one small wish stand a chance against such a big, overwhelming darkness? With a heavy sigh, she would pull her curtains closed, and her little room would go half dark, leaving only the soft glow of her bedside lamp to fight off the shadows. One sunny but cool afternoon, while walking through the neglected town park, she saw an old gardener. He was on his knees in a patch of dry, cracked soil, humming a cheerful tune to himself. His hands were covered in dirt, and he moved with a slow, deliberate grace, gently placing tiny seeds into the earth. The park was mostly brown and barren, a sad sight. It seemed like a hopeless task. Curiosity got the better of her. She approached him quietly and asked, her voice barely above a whisper, "Why do you plant seeds here? Nothing beautiful ever grows in this town." The gardener paused, looked up, and his weathered face broke into a warm, gentle chuckle. He wiped his dirt-stained hands on his overalls and looked her straight in the eye. "But that's where you're wrong," he said kindly. Beauty doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for the perfect conditions. Just needs someone brave enough to plant it. He winked, then returned to his work, his quiet humming filling the air once more. His words stayed with her all day, planting a different kind of seed in her mind. Yes. That night, as she sat at her desk, an idea sparked, as bright and sudden as a firefly. If the sky wouldn't give her stars, she would make her own. She found a roll of old silver wrapping paper, a pair of scissors, and a glue stick. Her small hands got to work carefully, meticulously cutting out dozens of small, five-pointed shapes. Her desk was soon covered in a galaxy of silver scraps and finished stars. But they weren't just paper. They were vessels for her wishes. On the back of each and every star, she wrote a tiny message, a little piece of hope she wanted to share. Simple words written in her neat, looping handwriting. One said, "Be kind." Another, "Rest." On a particularly shiny one, she wrote, "Try again." And on the smallest star of all, she carefully penned the words, "You matter." Each one was a quiet prayer for her town. When the clock struck midnight and the town was draped in its deepest sleep, Elara put on her coat and tiptoed outside, her pocket full of paper stars. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a mix of fear and excitement. This was her secret mission. Like the old gardener, she began to plant her stars. She taped one to a cold metal lamppost, its silver glinting in the artificial light. Another found a home on the side of a bus stop shelter where tired people waited every morning. She stuck them on front doors, park benches, and shop windows, turning the gray town into her personal canvas. She moved like a little shadow, a secret gardener of light. On the darkest, most forgotten street corners, she placed the brightest stars she had made. On the doors of houses that looked especially tired and lonely, she placed the ones with the gentlest messages. She left a star that said hope on the window of the local hospital, and another that read, "You are not alone," on a solitary, unused mailbox at the edge of town. Each star was a tiny beacon in the gloom. The next morning, as the first rays of sun touched the rooftops, the town began to stir. But something was different. People on their way to work or school stopped in their tracks. A woman waiting for the bus noticed a flash of silver and leaned closer. She read the words, "Try again." A small, slow smile spread across her face. A grumpy-looking man walking his dog found a star on a fence that said, "You matter," and he stood there for a long moment, his expression softening. A low murmur rippled through the town. K-Pa started pointing them out to each other. They looked up from their phones, their gazes lifting from the pavement. "Did you see this?" A teenager asked his friend, showing him a star. A little boy tugged on his mother's coat, pointing at one on a bakery window. For the first time in a very long time, people were looking up. And as they looked up at the paper stars, they started to notice the sky, too. As if by magic, the real stars, the ones that had been hiding, seemed to shine just a little bit brighter. That night, Elara returned to her post by the window. She took a deep breath and looked out. Her heart skipped a beat. The real sky looked different. It was no longer a blank, empty canvas. The deep, dark blue was now filled with a breathtaking display of stars, more than she had ever seen before. They twinkled and shimmered and pulsed with a brilliant, silver light stretching from one end of the horizon to the other. It was as if the universe itself had noticed her small act of courage. It was as if her little paper stars had sent a message all the way up to the heavens, and the heavens had decided to join in to answer her call for light. A soft laugh escaped her lips, followed by a single, happy tear that traced a path down her cheek. She pressed her hand to the cold window pane, her reflection smiling back at her from among the sea of celestial diamonds. She was just one small girl in one small town, but she had learned a profound secret. When you plant even the tiniest seeds of hope in the driest, most forgotten soil, the sky finds a way to answer. Sometimes, all it takes is one person brave enough to plant a star to remind everyone else to look up.